All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Happy Memorial Day. Kind of unusual, isn't it? No parades, social distancing. Never thought I'd see it. But here we are. So, if you are a subscriber, I want to thank you very much for being a subscriber. I hope I can continue to bring engaging, critical thinking dialogue, trying to connect the dots, something that you would want to share with a family member or a friend. And I thank you for, if you did receive this, I thank you for spending the time because I don't know how long it's going to take. I got a few notes here, things I want to cover, but I appreciate you putting time in and allowing me to share some thoughts. One of the questions that I've asked over and over and over again, and I ask myself this on a regular basis, do you admit you are wrong? Do we admit we are wrong? Do I admit I am wrong? Well, I'm going to say yes, I typically do. I was wrong on Fauci. I do believe that we can debate whether or not we think it was part of a death science team, but I do believe that Fauci he has his own agenda, and I do believe that he was giving advice based on people that are behind the scenes, making sure he knows where his paycheck comes from. I'm not talking about the one at the National Institute. I'm talking about an elite class. I'm talking Gates and others. I doubted Donald Trump, our president. I think I was wrong. I think Mike Adams has come out with some very compelling evidence. He's not quoting his sources. I don't need him to. I think he was very convincing in saying that our president has not abandoned us. I also think that if you look at what our president has done through executive orders and exposing aspects of the deep state, it really has become quite incredible in 3+ years. And so I haven't decided who I'm voting for yet. I'm leaning strongly towards Donald Trump. I don't know who the Democrats are going to actually nominate. I'm not certain that it's going to be Joe Biden. And I think very strong indications are, regardless of if Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee, you're really voting for whoever the vice president is. I don't know that that individual can serve a 4-year term. And he certainly would be representative of what our political landscape has most recently become, other than Donald Trump, and that is a puppet. Joe Biden is a puppet to what the system tells him to be, lobbyists especially. I can remember a good friend of mine years ago at a party said, look, our country's run by corporations now in the lobbyist system. And I really thought about that for a long time, and I doubted it. But I think my friend Larry was exactly right. And it is difficult. It is difficult to overcome that lobbyist system. If you've ever seen the movie Thank You for Smoking, it's very telling. Again, it's just a movie. I know it's just a movie. It's fiction. It's not real. I think there's a lot of truths in movies. I think it's right in our face. And we just want to be entertained, and we don't want to think too deeply. We don't want to think too much about it. I was also told by another good friend, longtime friend, Mike. He said, and he texted to me not too long ago, Trump will do anything for money. Well, it's my opinion, and I think there's a great deal of evidence to prove it. Every politician will do anything for the money. I think there are very few politicians out there. Politicians. Donald Trump's not a politician. I still, other than what I believe to be, he gave up a great life because he wanted to help right the direction the country was going the wrong way. He wanted to help right that direction. In a lot of ways, I really believe he was our last chance. Can we try to steer the right direction here? I'm hoping we continue to go in the right place, but almost every politician I see does things based on not whether or not it's best for the constituents, but based on what somebody else is telling them they need to do. Has Donald Trump done some of that? Maybe. He seems to have pissed just about everybody off in Washington. The never-Trumpers on the Republican side, the Democrats. I heard something today that apparently now Donald Trump's not taking hydroxychloroquine with zinc, but last week when he admitted that he was taking hydroxychloroquine with zinc, which I think trillions of doses of this have been taken by millions, if not at one time or another, or 65 years. It might even be 1 billion people. Who knows? The side effects are so minimal. It's not even worth mentioning. And there are many doctors. You just have to look for them. There are many doctors that have come out publicly and stated this. And I said it the other day, if I see Sergey Gupta get on there and say one more time that this is a dangerous drug, I'm going to shoot my own TV. Because that guy's such a liar now. And he was so respected at one time. And yet he knows where his paycheck comes from. Same thing with our politicians. They know where their paychecks come from. It's not the money they make as a public servant. Please, you're going to give up a very, very productive law career. And I think politicians, I mean, if you threw in the hat all of the lawyers that are politicians, I think 80 out of 100 of them are Democrats. You're going to give up a productive law career to go into public service and make less money? No. That's why term limits are so opposed by our elected officials. Nobody goes in there and makes less money as a public servant. Oh, I know what it says they're getting paid. Their bank accounts seem to grow more while they're in office than when they were in private sector. How's that a public servant position? So, to my friend Mike and everybody else among us that thinks Trump would do anything for $1, he's not actually getting paid to be president. He's foregone that. You can say, well, he's going to make a bunch of money as being the president. He's getting all these other things. Listen, the guy was already a multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire. And it really speaks to the same reason why I personally voted for Ross Perot, H. Ross Perot twice, in 92 and 96. And part of it was because I saw an interview with the then former mayor of Woodrow Stanley of Flint, Michigan. He was on the local Channel 12 broadcast. And when asked about what he thought of H. Ross Perot, his comment was, well, if he did get elected, who would he be beholden to? Well, what do you mean? Well, if he did get elected as an independent, who would he be beholden to? Who would he be loyal to? Who got him in there? What decisions would he make? And that's when it hit me. He doesn't have to be beholden to anybody. He can do what's right for America. And in 1992, one of his great phrases was, in his Texas drawl, was, what we need to do is rebuild our infrastructure. And he was right. We've had a dam break. here in Michigan that's caused tremendous damage. The bureaucracy of the EPA and the DEQ and the battles between private sector businesses and, let's say, the power plant or the power company that ran that particular dam for a while, and the bureaucracy. I'm looking at what I gathered from a couple articles that I read. If there was a situation where the bureaucracy of the state of Michigan, whether it's the EPA or the DEQ, wanted this particular power company to do more to strengthen that dam, and they threw up their hands and said, well, we can't be in business doing this. You're asking us to do too much. And they stepped away. Then why didn't the state step in and say, well, we're going to have to protect tens of thousands of people. We need to do something to rebuild this. And yet, after a period of 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it was, and I can't be exact on this, but I just think that if we think for 1 second that the state, the government, the federal government, the state government, the county government really cares about us more than they care about their paycheck and how their bottom line can be increased, I think we're mistaken. I think that our founding fathers gave us a great deal of truths, and that is that we need smaller government and we need checks and balances. And right now, we do not have a voice from the people, of the people, by the people, and for the people. I may call my state rep again this week, my state senator again this week. My frustration has been the weeks that I have called, I did not get a return call from my state rep. I got a return call from my state senator, my senator for the state of Michigan, not federally, but here in Lansing. A staffer called me, left me a message. I called back, no return after that. And I don't know how many of you actually have tried to reach out and have dialogue. But I will give a shout out to Ken Horn from Frankenmuth, Kevin Daly from Lapeer. In my opinion, they're doing as much as they can. I'd like to see them do more, certainly. But they're doing as much as they can and trying to be civil. I do not agree with the Democrats that have voted with the governor in keeping the state shut down, in continuing to have, and I know what you're going to say, well, we're opening up. We're not opening up fast enough. We have been lied to about the extreme concerns that all of us should have. If you haven't been paying attention to my vlogs, the virus is very, very contagious. It is something we need to be very, very concerned about, especially if you have underlying conditions. But as more and more deaths continue to be, the statistics continue to be refigured, we see that this is not something we should turn the world upside down for. And I mean 180 degrees. This is something that even as Fauci now starts to tell us, prolonged shutdowns are going to cause more deaths. Yeah, no kidding. Because poverty is what destroys lives. So when I'm looking at this, and I think that if we needed to look at the data, and that's what our governor has stated, we need to look at the data. I go to a speedway and the little TV's playing, and there's our governor telling us we need to stay home. And of course, many of you probably saw the Facebook post. I'm not on Facebook. I got a text of a Facebook post about the address in Elk Rapids where she was this weekend, because it's good for thee, but not for me. And that's kind of the monarchy mentality of our leaders right now. And so, I mean, I need a haircut. Here's the other thing I'm thinking of. It's about the data. So we got shelter in place, and it looks like more people that stay at home get sick and die than the ones that are out, that are providing the essential services anyway. Oh, and what is an essential business? The one you created, the one you gave everything, risk it all. That's what it is. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. We know that when we stay at home, we also suppress our immune system. I've been sharing with people the old George Carlin skit, and he talks about his immune system. The human immune system was created by God, and it is the greatest weapon against viruses and bacteria ever. But we need practice. In the immortal words of George Carlin, we need practice. We need to be able to be identifying these things in our body. So the other thing is that hydroxychloroquine and zinc, the president took all kinds of crap for this a week ago. Apparently he's not on it now. But to finish up on this point, the number of healthy adults that were going to travel abroad in a potential malaria situation and given hydroxychloroquine for a 7 or 2 week period might truly be, in conjunction with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, over the last 65 years, it might be in the trillions of doses. And it might be in the billions of people. For sure, hundreds of millions of people. That's not even for debate. Have received this drug. And no one's ever saying that it should not be under the direction of a doctor. And if we're going to try to give it to severe cases only, of course, the man or woman that's 80 years old, stage 4 cancer, stage 4 renal failure, stage 4 whatever, advanced deterioration of lungs or whatever they were in hospice for, and they're given hydroxychloroquine and say, oh, look, that didn't work. And I don't mean to sound like I have a lack of empathy, because I would rather that those lives were celebrated for being 80 years old. I'm not 80. I haven't made it there yet. I'm hoping I do. I expect to. But we should celebrate those lives. And the idea that a drug that's been given for 65 years, and if you look for the doctors that have come out publicly, and there are thousands of them with the greatest credentials saying this is such a safe drug, I just think we're not listening to the science. I don't think we're listening to the data. And if we get back to the whole suppressing our immune system, and I'm so glad I do not work in what's considered to be an essential storefront brick and mortar business, and you're expected to wear a mask for a 6 or 8 hour shift, and you're weakening your immune system as you do that. And I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend to be one, but I've read enough doctors who are on record as saying, look, you're suppressing your immune system when you do that. So please share this with whoever is forced to wear a mask every day. The other thing too is we looking at the data, we've got the largest unemployment numbers ever. And yet our politicians, and again, if you've listened to me very long, you know if you've got a D next to your name or an R next to your name, I'm critical if you are screwing up. And here's a screw up for you, that we're still going to allow the same number of visas, or maybe even by some accounts, some people are asking for more visas. We need less people getting, hey, a welcome into this country right now. We got a lot of people in this country that are very talented, and we need to make sure they are working first. Let's just put a moratorium on any of these things until we're back to 5% inflation or unemployment or less. And then we've also got this, if we're listening to the data, and you take all of these things into account, because this is what I'm leaning toward believing, that this was an attempt to take down Donald Trump as president of the United States, to make sure he does not get reelected. And it doesn't matter the human life, because the people that make these kind of decisions, there's always well, what's the death toll going to be? And if you look at the decisions that are made by people in control, they do this on a regular basis, whether it's from a battlefield, a general decides, well, if we try to take that position, if we try to take that hill, how many casualties can we expect? And as long as it's an acceptable amount, they give the order to advance. And I really think that we're caught up in something like that. I really think that there are people in positions of power, especially in China, that don't want to see Donald Trump win the next election. I believe that there are people in power in this country that do not want to see Donald Trump win the next election. But I also think that it's even larger than that, because when you hear people say, we're not going to let a crisis go to waste, what would another example of that be? It would be this. There has been a war on cash in this world, in the global economy. India has done it at one time or another. Other countries have done it. The United States have been doing it for a while. It's a war on cash. And why would that be? Well, because it's less accurate in being able to tax people. Who has suffered the most in this economic downturn, in this pandemic, in this shutdown, in this quarantine? Mostly led by Democratic governors. Who has been hurt the most? I'm willing to suggest that it is the single owner LLC, the small business owner, that's basically a cash basis. Your bars, your restaurants, the wait staff in there. I just want you to think about it for a while. Is it possible that this is just a coincidence? Or has the war on cash over the last many years and even decades, at one time or another throughout the globe, and especially in the United States over the last 10 years, has the war on cash taken advantage of this? Or is this all part of an underlying theme? I'm going to keep looking into this. The mail-in votes. This is another opportunity to not let a crisis go to waste. You hear people talking about the suppression of votes in the state of Georgia. And the election of 2018 would have been different if the suppression of votes would not have occurred. That's a narrative and an agenda that is only from the left. It happened to be the largest voter turnout that Georgia had ever seen. So if they were suppressing votes, I find it difficult to believe. But I will tell you this. All parties, and really there's two in this country, right? The GOP and the DNC. The Democrats and the Republicans both have committed voter fraud. They've all been, both parties have been found guilty after investigation and trial of committing voter fraud. I would suggest that it's probably an 80-20 percentage of every 100 voter fraud instances. I think it's probably closer to 75 to 80% of it being committed on the left. One of our latest is right here in Southfield, Michigan. But I will ask people to go ahead and do your own research. In the 2016 election, when Jill Stein for the Green Party requested that there be a recount vote in the states that were the swing states for Donald Trump, Michigan was one of them. And in Wayne County alone, there were more than 800 fraudulent votes calculated during that recount. It was only 3 days long. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, you know what? No, we're good. We don't need to recount. We don't need to recount. Now you can call me a conspiracy theorist, but I believe that what the left decided was, you know what? We don't need a recount. We have Crossfire Hurricane. We've got all these other insurance policies in place. We're going to get him out anyway. So let's not bring attention to what our underlying fraud, ongoing fraud, really is. And so I would encourage you to fact check me, because I wouldn't say it if I didn't read it and it was not from a very credible source. Could they be lying? I guess it's possible, but I think it's more probable that what I just stated is something we really need to be concerned about. The $1 trillion legislation that we continue to see passed federally, do we really think that that's not going to cause inflation? Now, I'm going to suggest that my United States Congressman Dan Kildee and my Senator Gary Peters, that's running for re-election, and I happen to really, really like John James, who's running against Gary Peters, not because he's an R or a D, because Gary Peters is a lifelong bureaucrat. I was when Gary Peters first ran against and defeated Joe Nolenberg for the U.S. Congress seat in Oakland County back in maybe 2004, 2005, right in there. So it was probably the 2006 race. I was at they call them political fundraisers. It's like a legislative branch. So if it's the NRA, it's the ILA or something. It's the fundraising aspect of it. And it was for something to do with the Humane Society. And I got there and I started listening to the people talking, and they were completely against it. It was sort of like a PETA rally, and they were completely against hunting. And I've been a hunter most of my life, my family has, and being responsible and harvesting animals and understanding, even with hunting, the deer population in Michigan has doubled over the last 30 years. And that's with less space for them to grow and more houses being built and developments and everything else. So that was the first time I heard about this Gary Peters, who had ran the Michigan lottery before that. So he's just a bureaucrat. And I have not appreciated his voting record. And that is the one thing I would say. When we're looking at these $1 trillion pieces of legislation that continue to be passed, and right now it's Dan Kildee and it's Gary Peters that are on record and how they voted, and then they continuously try to tell me and all of us who are in my same area all the things they've done for us during this challenging time during the pandemic and the money that they've brought me. And yet that legislation was passed regardless. Where was Dan Kildee in requesting that we have at least a quorum for the House of Representatives to be able to vote on something? Republican Robert Massey in Kentucky took a lot of crap for actually saying, hey, we got to show up. We just can't vote by proxy here, because the Constitution of the United States states that we need to show up. We have to have at least 51% present. And then the speaker went ahead and did a voice vote anyway. But at least somebody's following the Constitution. You see, every single elected official takes an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And I don't think we've been doing a very good job of holding our elected officials accountable to that oath, especially what's gone on here in the state of Michigan. The excuse has been the 1946 executive, the piece of legislation that was written that supposedly gave, within reason, executive authority to make certain things illegal, make certain things, to fall in line with an executive order. And I think we're going to see some lawsuits. We already have had them filed, but I think we're going to see some lawsuits in favor of the citizenry of the state of Michigan, that this was unreasonable. And so when I listen to our state reps, and I'll use two of them as an example, Cheryl Kennedy from here where I'm at in Michigan, and then north of here, Brian Elder. And these are two state reps that seem, no matter what the governor says, they're going to vote in line with the governor. And I've said this about one of the main differences I see between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. In the Republican Party, and it's pretty obvious, you've got the never Trumpers, you've got the Mitt Romneys of the world, you've got the Jeff Sessions of the world, as much as he wants to say he was doing President Trump's agenda as best he could. Well, I don't agree with that at all. There's a number of people, and think about it. A senator is there for 6 years. He gets reelected one time. He or she gets reelected one time, and they're there for 12 years. That's 3 presidential terms. The senators have always thought they're more powerful than the president. They've always had that superiority complex going. The House of Representatives, on the other hand, get reelected every 2 years because they're supposed to be the closest ones to us. And in a vlog a month or so ago, I gave you the example of when Obamacare was being voted on, and I was at then Dale Kildee's office on St. Patrick's Day that year, and at Debbie Stabenow's office in Flint, Michigan on St. Patrick's Day. And I was explaining there are 100 people on the street saying vote no. And you're telling me not one was saying vote yes. And you're telling me that that's what your constituents wanted? I don't believe that. It's what your superiors wanted. And that's the reason why you voted. And I see that in State Rep Kennedy and State Rep Elder, because you're not listening to the data. The data's not there. You're trying to kill all of us that are small business owners. You're wanting us to be broken on our knees so that we have to ask the government for, or expect something from the government. I'm going to tell you, we're not going to do that. We're stronger than that. We will persevere. The people, the citizens of the state of Michigan and the United States of America, we will not stand for this. This is going to end. It's going to end soon. We are going to do the next right thing. We are paying attention on how you legislate right now. We are paying attention more than we ever have. The one thing with these trillion-dollar pieces of legislation, I think it is not only possible, I think it's highly probable that it's going to cause inflation to the extent that we have not seen in the United States since 1981. I think gold, silver, cryptocurrency, firearms, and ammunition. Those are 5 things, 5 areas that are what I consider a storage of value. And what I mean by that is, if you spend in any of those 5 things right now, if you put, for every $100 you put into those 5 areas right now, Memorial Day 2020, you will have more than $100 in value come Labor Day. And you will have more than $100 in value after the next election. And you will have more than $100 in value in 2021. In those 5 areas. For every $100 that you put into those 5 areas, you'll be able to sell those items for $200, $300, or more. That's how I can break it down in blue-collar terms of what this impending inflation is going to mean. I had some notes here tonight, and I'm reminded by my last vlog, and that was, a lot of times when I'm talking, especially because I'm leaning towards voting for Donald Trump again, you assume I'm a Republican. And it's a R versus a D conversation. I really have to consider myself, having voted for Ted Nugent numerous times as a write-in, as governor for the state of Michigan, and boy, don't I wish he was here now. H. Ross Perot for president. I would consider myself an independent. I know right now today, if I had to vote tomorrow, I know that my ticket for this upcoming election is going to have some D's on it, especially locally, and it's going to have some R's on it. And once I look at it, the ballot might even have some independents or a libertarian, or it might have somebody else on there. I don't know everybody running at this moment. I'd like to believe, especially in our local elected officials, to be that first line of defense against an overreaching state and federal government. I'm very disappointed that our local officials have let us down. But I'm optimistic that they can still step in and do the next right thing. I pray that they do. And my prayers and my faith, I still know and believe all of this, God is in control. I'm coming up on 40 minutes. I know I've been trying to say I'm going to be shorter. I start talking and this is what happens. Thank you for watching. If you found something in here of interest, you like it, please share it. Until the next time, I'm James Detroit. I'm out.